As I said right at the outset of this top 50 countdown, there would not be many motorbikes featured. However, in my top 20, there are actually more than there have been through the entire list so far. Now, there are only 5 on the entire list anyway. And of course, we have already covered 2 of them, the Ducati 748 SP and the Agility Saetta R. The Agility was way down in the 40s on the list, which is where it deserves to be. It's a great bike in its own way, but definitely not one of my absolute favourites. However, I must admit, and I hate to say this, but the biggest regret of my entire countdown is putting that Ducati so low, because the more I think about it, and the length of time that I've loved that bike, and it truly is one of my absolute dream vehicles, plus it's such an attainable one compared to many of the others on the list, it should have been higher. That Ducati may have even been top 10 if I had rejiggled the list. I can't really do that now, but bear that in mind as we go on. That Ducati should definitely be in my top 10 as far as I'm concerned. It's the only disparity on the list. It's way, way lower because I didn't give it enough thought. And that's the only one that's been the case with to that degree. I also thought about having the Panos a little bit higher as well, the LMP car, but that one's not quite as bad as the Ducati. This, though, is another bike which I absolutely love, and it's one which I don't talk about much. Not many people do talk about it that much. Some because they don't like electric vehicles, because this one is, in a similar way to the Saetta. But the difference between this one and the Saetta, which was, as I said, way, way back in this list, is that this one is the full package for me. The Saetta is a great little diversion. It's like the Spiker La Violette of electric bikes. It's this small, weird, alternative, oddball choice with a high price. Not the best performance around, but it's certainly fast. It's the boutique option, but a very useful one as well. This is not so much the Spiker, this is more like the MV Agusta of the electric bike world. And for those who maybe aren't as familiar with bikes, I would categorise MV Agusta as the Pagani of the motorbike world. They are the true blend of great looks, incredible sound, and fantastic performance. The Pagani Zonda of bikes. Which may seem weird that there are no MV Agustas in my countdown, but it's more my love for them as a brand than any specific model. With this bike, I would put them in that similar camp. The MV Agusta of electric bikes, or in other words, the Pagani of electric bikes, because there seem to be these mentalities that electric vehicle makers have, and I don't really understand it. And it doesn't just apply to bikes, it's cars as well, and there are so few who really buck this trend. But the ones who do tend to be among my favourites. I would classify Mission, Agility, Tesla, Rimac, various others among these. And this is this tendency that companies seem to have of making electric cars look weird, or electric bikes have to look dumb or just underwhelming. There's a company I don't recall the name of, but they make electric city bikes. They're overpriced, they underperform, and they just look boring. They're like dirt bikes, that kind of thing, which in principle is a great idea, but make it look good. You're trying to make people buy these bikes, don't just make them look like everything else, which is why I love stuff like the Saetta or a Tesla or the Rimac or this that much more, because they make use of the fact that it's electric to justify having this radically different design, which is genuinely eye-catching and looks great. And there are very few, if any, I would say, other electric bikes which look as good as this one. Now, there are faster ones, for sure. The Saetta actually isn't too far off for acceleration, but the top speed's no way near. Then on the other hand, you have the Lightning LS218, which is by far the fastest electric bike in the world, as the name suggests, and that's an absolute monster. But it's not on my list because I'm not a fan of the way that bike looks at all. I think it's about as generic looking as you can possibly get. This one, though, is the full package. It looks like a true exotic superbike, which is exactly what it is. It's like this, it's almost like a Formula E car, but in the bike world, for the road. It looks like a competition concept that shouldn't even be on the street, which in a weird kind of way it sort of is, because that's the tragic part of the story. This bike was incredible. It was so highly anticipated by the people who wanted one. It's a very expensive bike. I think it was something like $35,000 or $40,000, which for a bike is a huge amount of money. especially if you consider the fact that the agility Saetta is like 17,000 or 17,000 pounds, which is what, $25,000, $30,000, that region. So this was even more expensive, far more expensive than most traditional superbikes like MV Agustas and Ducatis, but it backs it up. Because unlike the Saetta, which has about, 100 horsepower or so, this one has over 160. That is true superbike territory. Plus, it's not ridiculously heavy. The performance is fantastic, 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. Top speed is limited to around 150, which isn't too surprising for an electric bike. And the handling is, as far as I can tell, really good. Because they did basically design it to be a MotoGP bike for the road, which happened to have a big battery pack and a motor instead of, say, a 4-pot or a twin or something like that. Now, the performance is incredible. To me, the looks are incredible. I love the choice of colour scheme with the grey, white and yellow. It's not an obvious choice. It makes it stand out from the crowd. The single headlamp, to me, looks fantastic. Again, very MV Agusta-esque. And the whole bike is just so purely focused on what it wants to achieve, but it doesn't leave things like legitimate style to the wayside. It proves, in a similar way to some of my other favourites, especially cars, the Maserati MC12 is the one that I always think of first, these vehicles that prove that you can simultaneously be brilliantly competitive but also stunning looking at the same time. One does not have to negate the other. It can, but it doesn't have to. This bike proves that. It has incredible performance. The range was over 100 miles to the charge, which is great for an electric bike currently. But in researching this countdown, actually, I found something very unfortunate. It's dead. The company is dead. They filed for bankruptcy. They've had no income whatsoever. Nobody owns a Mission RS, which is such a shame. It was featured on Jay Leno's Garage. That's where I was introduced to the bike. That's why I fell in love with it. It was such an incredible concept. I could not wait to see this thing hit the street. But then, in a similar way to the MGS VR and all of the controversy surrounding that one, similar thing happened here. You've got co-founders of the company suing each other over supposed violence and various other legal reasons, which, I mean, it's fair enough if it's legitimate, but this is just the unfortunate byproduct of that. The fact that the bike is dead. I believe certain backers didn't pull through for them. Various funding that they were hoping for didn't arrive. And so ultimately they didn't make enough money to produce them. That's such a shame. For those of us who wanted the bike, of course, because there are many people who probably don't care because it's electric and their mind automatically shuts down purely because of that. But for those of us who are open-minded about alternative tech, not just to save the environment, but just because it's cool, I love this bike. And it certainly deserves a place in my top 20. It's just unfortunate that it's probably never going to be an option to buy one. And that really is a shame. But that's it for this pick. Of course, you can check out all of my others by clicking through at the end of this video. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.